Hi guys, welcome back. My name is Paul Kroon and I'm gonna be your host today. And today we're gonna look at the next part of our PowerApps Flow SQL server. And maybe you notice my voice is a little bit weird because I'm very sick and I'm well sneezed by sometimes. I hope you don't mind, but I still wanted to make this video because this is gonna be a very nice, great video which learns you a lot, because we gotta do something with some date issues. I noticed PowerApps have a lot of date issues when you want to calculate things and when you give date to the SQL server and then get it back, which is transformed with the regions date, and it doesn't work quite well often, so I think so we're gonna deal with that. Also, we're gonna deal with some issues we get from Flow, because we are gonna work with dynamic information, and dynamic information for our app is we have a registration app, so we're gonna register the things we do. So first we're gonna travel, then we're gonna do a visit, then we're gonna travel again. So basically we only have one record active maximum. But what if we don't have active records? You will see we get errors then, first in Flow, after that in PowerApps. So what I'm gonna show you is how to deal with those flows, and what I'm basically gonna show you is how I dealt with it. So I'm gonna take you along with how I looked at the problem with all the steps, and then at the end tell you how I fixed it. And it was quite easy if you know what to do. So that's gonna be great. It's gonna be a great video, a little bit longer than normal, but still it's gonna be worth it, I think. So I hope you like this also. So let's go to our SQL server first, because there it starts everything. So last time we did our customers, our destination type and our record stations, and we got them in Flow, and it was pretty straightforward, not very difficult. We only had to look very well at our JSON schema. We did. So this is gonna be fine, and we know there are probably always gonna be customers. It's gonna change something, but it's pretty static, and never there gonna be no customers. And if it is, it's good that PowerApps or one of the other parts of our solution will give an error, because it's not right. Now for the destination type it's just a few, but we know there are always records and it's static. So it's nice to get it in the way we do on the start event and then use it during the time we're using our app. But now we go to the registration types, and when we first start with a select, we see there are no records. So if we would make a solution now, the returned record would be 0, so an empty table, and that's gonna cause problems later on. But as I say, let's start with our first step by putting in some record stations, then create a view which we can use to call in our store procedure and give back to Flow. So basically we're gonna do a little bit the same, and let's start with a view this time. And what we want record stations, and I think we're gonna use the views we have, because they are they have more information, so they have the full address, and I think I want to give that back to the user when they have an active registration. Why do I want to do that? Because then I can use this in PowerApps to navigate with Google Maps, for example. And when I don't have the full address, I have to concatenate everything, so I have to do a lot of formulas at the side of PowerApps. And I think what I do, what my advice is, to do things on the SQL server instead of at PowerApps. So if you know we're gonna reuse this kind of stuff in PowerApps a lot, and I can build an SQL server, build it there, because it's very efficient in doing things. It's much better, and PowerApps can cause issues and a lot of red signs, and I don't want that. So let's first put in all our records and do Ctrl R. Let's save this as view registrations, and that's fine, I think. Let's close it for now. Refresh our views and design it. And when it's right, PowerApps brings in all the columns as separate fields, and that's what we want. So now we're gonna connect our relation tables. So let's first start with the top one, the record station type, and just connect the ID with the ID here. And then say we want to select all the rows from the record station, and this basically means that I want all the rows here, whether or not there is a record station type connected. And we know that's gonna be always the case, but for the destination, it's not always the case, and also for the customer it's not always the case. There is a connection or a number in this table, because it's not required. So we can have the name, and let's run our script to see what happens. Okay, now we don't get records, and that's normally because we didn't insert, and of course we have to do that at start. So what I do is go into the table, do the right button to get to the contact mode, and then script table as an insert script. And I find it's the most easiest way to do these things. So let's take this out because we don't need that. And the other ones we need for now. So let's put in a record station type, let's put in a 1, destination, let's put in a 1. Let's make a ID, and I'm gonna use this ID later on in PowerApps to show you how it works, but normally this would be your Office 365 account. So a customer, let's do 2, let's get a date and just do get dates, and for the start time do the same and erase the things we don't need. Let's see what I'm doing wrong. I have this is correct. Oh, this is extra. Okay, now it's gonna be fine. So let's put it in, and when we go to the select statements, and we see we have one record. Let's put in another one, only without a customer, or let's without a destination type. And comment this out and say this is it too. Run it and run our query again. So now we have a registration ID and a registration type, and now we can, when it's right, see some records. And there are a lot, but that's because of the cross joins I still have on these tables. So let's do the next one. Now this is ready. Let's go to the destination, connect it, put right, and don't forget to select all the rows from record station, because in this case the destination, it's not always there. So when you ain't doing this, you won't get records back when the destination is empty. And I think that's not what we want. So now we got 100 records. So you see this cross join is deleted, and this will come together. Let's do the same with the customer. To the customer ID, right click, select the rows, and run our table again. So check, check, double check. So now we have our 2 records, and only the records from our first table. Now let's label our tables, and label is give them a alias. And what I do is that the primary table I give just 1 letter as an alias, and my relation table I give 2, and I give normally the first 2. So let's do CU for customer, DU for destination, and RE for registration type. Let's run it again, and you see that here in the top there is just an R. So later on, when we have our view and our columns, we can see, okay, this comes from the fact table, and it with 2 is coming from our relation table. Now let's put in what we want to show. So this is the registration type, and it's a name. Let's give it an alias. Name. Let's make this a little bit wider so we can see what we do, because the name is the same as the name here, so we want to have an alias. Destination, type name, and here the customer, we want to have the customer name, and I think the full address for now. Do we want to have the city? Probably we want to have the city also, so we can filter later on our record stations. So historic record station based on the city. Now other address, the zip code, I don't think it's necessary. Customer, the customer group, yes, we want to add that also. So customer name, and it's the same, but still, let's, you see this is unique and it's the same as the alias, so he will erase it itself. Customer full address, customer city, customer group is okay. And you see also the city, I say customer city, and that's why because this is a fact table on another table, and I want to label my columns, then I know this is from the customer table, this is from the destination table, and it's from the registration type. So when I'm in Power App, I can start customer, and I see all the customer related tables I bring in, and that's gonna help me later on. So let's do Control R one more time and see if it works. So we have the registration ID, the type, and here we have the customer name, city, customer group, destination type. Okay, let's save this. And let's refresh our filters and try this for the first time. And okay, I get all the records back, and fine. Now we are not ready yet, because this is a registration and we have a lot of time related items. And as I said, PowerApps isn't very good with times and time difference, and I got some problems. What I say is, when you can bring your logic to PowerApps and build there what you want to show the customer, or at least for most of the times, and in a format you can easily adjust to your needs in PowerApps. And first calculating 2 days, and it doesn't work for me. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna copy this part, go to a new query window and paste this. Now I'm gonna format it a little bit. Like this. And sometimes when I need it I will format it all the way, but in this case I won't do that. So let's put in extra line. So what we want to do here is to show the dates in the format we want to give it to the customer. And of course we could do that in PowerApps, but when we do it here I think it's easier. And for us counts that we are in the Netherlands, in Europe, and we have another date representation. So let's do this. What we're gonna use here is, and I'm going to the browser and I say SQL convert. So we're gonna use the convert functions, and a really good source is the W3 School when you're just starting with SQL Server. So what this does, we have to put in a type, a data type we want to put out, and it's going to be a varchar because we want to return text to our user. And why we want to return text? Now, basically because when we call the store position flow, we get a table back, we push it back to PowerApps in a JSON format. And a JSON format doesn't allow dates, so it's gonna convert the date to a text string. So why don't do it ourselves? So we give JSON schema a text file, format it in the way we want to show it in our app. And I think that's more reliable than let JSON do the transformation and do then a transformation in PowerApps to show it in the way we want, by first converting it to a date again and then text format it back to what we want. So we're gonna have a varchar, then we have gonna have the date or the date time, and then we're gonna have a style, and the style means that you can format it in a ISO standard. And here we see the date, month and years, and that's Italian, European style, and it's the same for the Netherlands. So I'm gonna use this. So let's go to our query window again and say we want to use the convert to a varchar, and we want to do an extra comma and 105 because we want to use this style, and we want to put in our date, and let's say this is our S date text, so we know this is a text when we go to PowerApps. So let's run this and see if this works. So we have a nice text string at the right in the format. All people in the Netherlands like to use it and know what it means. So let's copy this part and say we want to do the same for the R time. and let's copy this again, because we want to do the same for the end time. So end time text, start time text. Now we can use 105 for this because it's not good formatted, but let's see which format we can use. So hours, minutes, seconds. I say we use 108 here. Let's run this. So I check a lot while I'm building my columns or column representations. So here we see the start time, but I don't like the seconds here because I have to take that away when I leave that in now. So what we're gonna do is just doing left, comma 5, and the same, comma 5. See if this works. Okay, now we have a nice text of 5 characters, and the time represented with first 2 letters, because here we have 24 hours representation in the Netherlands, and the minutes, the hours and the minutes. So nice. Now let's go to the next step, because sometimes I want to be able, not in lot cases, but let's say we want to be able to calculate in PowerApps if we want. So we want to give a text format back that we can use to do that kind of things. So let's do basically this. Let's copy this part, or let's copy one, take out the left and the comma 5, say this is an ISO representation, and ISO means that it's based on a standard, an international standard. So let's go to our browser again, and let's see what standards we have. So here we have the ISO 8601 and with the time zone. Now we don't need the time zone, so we're gonna use 126 as a input here. 126, and let's do the same here, only for our end time. Let's run it again. So now we have a text representation of our text, which is an ISO standard, and PowerApps can work great with this. When you're converting this text to a date, it's gonna be fine because it's an international standard you're giving back. So this works. Now I see not the end time, and I think I want to check that. So let's make a update to script, and where I do is 1, because the first gonna have the active gonna be 0, because this is, let's put in a note. Let's say the end time is get date, and the rest we don't need. Now we have a comma too much. Okay, let's see if this works. Where ID? Okay, how does the ID column is called? Okay, registration ID. Normally I just put an ID column in my tables, and I don't do this. I do this as at relation level, and the ID is for the table. So now we should have a closed non-active with an end time. Well, let's close this to keep it a little bit organized, and let's run it one more time. So now we have the eval for the end time, and we have the time for the end time. Now this is a registration, so probably the user want to see the difference between the end time and the start time, and when there's no end time, the start time and the time on this moment. So let's build it. So we're gonna do the convert again. Oh no, we ain't gonna do the convert for this. We're gonna do something else, and let's first find that, because we're gonna use the date diff function. Let's take the W free schools again, because it's very nice in complaining how it works. And the date diff needs a parameter for what do you want to calculate. Can be year, can be minutes, seconds, microseconds, months, etc. It needs a input, start and end, and we'll calculate the difference. And here you see a text, so it can be a text representation or a real date representation. So let's just put in the dates here, columns here, and see if that works. So let's first go to here. Here we have the minutes, and I think we first want to calculate the minutes, and let's use the mi in our function. So we're gonna do conf dative. We want to return minutes. We have to put in the end date. Oh, it doesn't matter if you do the end date first and the second date second, probably. So let's check if this is really the case. Ration minutes. Oh, it does matter, basic probably. So let's put the start time at the start, and we get 70 minutes. Only we see we don't get a duration for where there is no end time. So we kind of fixed it, and of course we can fix it with a case when we can do an if formula, but I think there is a lot easier way. And let's go to our browser again, and probably a lot of people think, oh, I know SQL and leave me alone. And we're gonna use the if no function, and also here FreeW schools has a perfect explanation about how it works, and it works that the is no function gets some strings, and when it's null it's gonna go to the next till it finds a value, or no, when the first is null, so we can add a condition here, then it's gonna take the second parameter. If this is not null, it's gonna take the first. Okay, Paul, explain in a good way. So here we can say is null, put in the R time in the first part, and when it's no, say we want to have the get date back. And close the is no function. Close the date if as duration minutes. So let's see if this works. So now we see the second one has started at 49, isn't ended yet, and has 21 minutes on this moment. Okay, great. I think this works like this. Now let's say we want to have the duration also in the hours and minutes, just like here. So let's do that. And I think the easiest way to do that is to take this formula and just do a calculation with it. So let's do first divided by 60. Let's run it. As duration hours, and he doesn't like this, so surround this by, and let's see what I'm doing wrong. Okay, here is one I didn't copy. So here the duration hours in an int is divided by 60 is zeros, and that's because we don't have a registration longer than an hour. Let's take this part, go down, and say now we want to have the modulus, we want to use that, and we want to divide it by 60. And you see this is not a function which is supported, but this should be. The SQL mod function. So there's a divided and there is a divider, but we see it doesn't work. And what you can try then is to do a squirrely bracket, I suppose, fn, and here you say to SQL, hey, this is a function, can you evaluate it as that? And then it works. And it's not always the case, but sometimes when you specifically say to SQL, in this matter, this is a function, it's gonna react. So now we have the duration minutes again. It's 2. And then we have a modulus, and what a modulus does, it takes the int minutes, and that's 70, and it's going to divide it by 60, and it's going to return everything what's left when it's done taking all the 60s off. So it's going to look when you have 150 and you want to divide it by 60. Now there are 2 full parts of 60 going from 150, so you got 120 off, and then it's going to return what's not dividable by 60, so it's going to return the 30. So in this case it's going to return all the minutes. So now we have a duration hours, duration minutes, and the only thing we have to do is to don't put it on separate lines, but concatenate it, and probably this will give an error. Oh. And this is no error because we are, how do we say that? We are just adding it up. But let's put in a string because we want to separate it by the double points. And then it's gonna have a error. And why does it have an error? Because we have to convert this to a var char. So this is text, And I'm thinking, oh no, let's do it like this. So let's convert to varchar. Varchar, comma, or and this should work. So let's say this goes to another line and this goes to another line, so we can read it better. So now we have our duration in 017, 026. Now we will get one problem, and that's when this second part has less than 10 minutes. So it's gonna be 0 double points 1. And let's say duration text. So it's description. So we have to do something with this formula. So let's take this, put it on another line, and we just gonna do this for testing. And I think we need the whole convert part. So let's take that. And what we're gonna do here is just say we want to use the write function. We first want to concatenate our string with double zeros and then give the last 2 back. So what it's basically gonna be, let's say this is 40 now, then it's gonna be 0, 0, 14 in the string, and we gotta give the last 2 back. If this is 0, so empty, so basically precisely in 1 hour, it's gonna be the 2 zeros with nothing, so it's gonna be just the 2 zeros, and because there are 2 returned, it's gonna be the second 0. If we have a number between 0 and 10, and we have 7, we basically have the 2 zeros and 7, so 3 characters, and give the last 2 back, so we get the 0 and the 7 back. So that's the whole idea about this formula, and let's replace this part and run it again. You see I'm checking all the steps I take, and now we have 017 also working when the minutes are under 10. And basically I think we are done. We could, and I think I will do that because it's gonna be a text either way. We are capable to delete this once, but maybe I'm just let it stand there, because when I'm connecting to the view directly in the future, when I want to show my historic data, which from performance objective is less important, that is fast and is speedy, maybe I want to have the view, and then I will be able to use the dates as they are here. So basically we are done with our view. So let's copy this whole part, copy this, go to our view. Where is our view? This we don't need anymore. Here is our view, and let's paste this in. Let's do Ctrl R to see if it runs properly. Go to the right to see all our nice text formatted representations of our time elements in our table. And let's save this, go to our view, select all rows, and great. Okay, now we're gonna build our stored procedure, and there we're gonna basically do the same as we do all the times. Just take in the select statements, go to a new stored procedure, replace this part with our select, erase everything we don't need. Okay, I'm Paul, and I created this on 2018, and it's the 25th of October, and we're gonna get active registrations to PowerApps, and let's call this, and let's do the same. PowerApps registrations active. Let's do it like this. So we know these are the active registrations we want to use every time we post or update or do something with a record, basically. Do we need parameters? Yes, we need a parameter because we only want to have active records. So let's put in an int and say this is basically 1 as default, so we want to have the active. And why I use an int and not a bit? Because an int can have different states, and later on you're gonna see examples why I use this kind of behavior. Or let's do it right away. So here I'm gonna put in a if formula and say when active is in 0 or 1, then set, sorry, not in 0 or 1, then set that active is no. So, and this is nice to use in my where clause. So we have a where clause, and we say is null and active is, and we don't need the and, but we need the or function. Now let's put it down and look at this. What this basically gonna do, first we're gonna have a active int in. We're gonna pass it full flow from PowerApps, and we basically gonna say this is 1 in general. So when the active is 1, it comes in, it's gonna look at the if formula, it's in 0 or 1 in one of those cases, so we ain't gonna do the true value. So we're gonna go on, we're gonna select our statement and say active is active. This is gonna be true, and we're gonna give the records back which are active. But when we pass another int from PowerApps, so let's say we are gonna do the free because we want to have all our records, this is gonna be evaluated. It's not in this part, so it's gonna set it to 0, and then this part is gonna be true, and it's gonna return all the records because this is true for all the select statement for all the records in our table. Okay, let's create this. I did something wrong. Okay. Active. Oh, active. Yes. Let's create it now, and it works. Let's refresh this, and let's test this by executing it. And what we're gonna do is gonna put in 1. This 1, okay. It's have 1 record. When we put in 0 and we run it again, it's gonna have 1 record which is not active, and where we see that active is 0 and not 1. But when we do in 3 or whatever other information, we got all the records. So basically, this is how it works. Very easy to store your data full flow in different collections with the same flow. So now we have our record station. Now let's go to our browser, to our app, and take the next part, go to action, go to our flow, and say we want to create a new flow. We want to add a new step, and we're gonna basically just do the things we did earlier, with the only difference that PowerApps will give the possibility to put in a value. And in this case we're gonna ask in PowerApps. Now when you use a store procedure and you say in my flow I just want to give values to some of the fields and the rest I want to have default, you just can leave them default here and only put in asking PowerApps where you want them to. And as far as I know, that's allowed to do. So let's take this one, record station active. Let's see how we call this. We're gonna have the R and then our name, R. Oh, and take this part. So let's save this. Let's put in a test. And here I'm gonna use 0. And why do I use 0? Because I have one inactive of one closed record, and I know when I get that in that all the fields has values. You see, all the fields has a value, and that's gonna make it easy for me to get my JSON scheme. It's gonna be some easier because I get one record with my schema, and in this case I don't have to go to the notepad to change it. I'm just able to put it in here and be done with it, because I know there are all strings and record. And you see our S-time ESO is a string by default, and it's gonna be fine like this. Great. So here we have our result table. Let's save this and okay, and let's go to PowerApps and use our PR record station active. Okay, why is this? Probably did something wrong. Let's test it again. Demo 0 or 1. Let's try 1 again to see if we get the right records, and it outputs 1 record. So you would say it should work. Let's put it out and in. let's close this and open our Power App again. Go to here and see if the flow works. No. Okay, I will do this in a minute. I will pause the video and I will see what's going on here and come back when I can edit. Probably I did something wrong, but we will see. Okay, see you in just a moment. Okay, it took me a while to find what the problem was, and the problem was that I thought my result set from a closed record was totally filled, and I can use it as a schema for my response. It basically wasn't, because the customer group wasn't filled and wasn't labeled in my JSON schema. So in PowerApps there was a customer group which wasn't supported as the kind of column PowerApp has to make in a collection, and that was breaking the app up. So I found a solution, I managed to make it, and now I can run my application. Collect and say this registration is an active list. It's gonna be a list again. And why do I call this list? Because it's a list with objects, and so I know this is a collection when there is a list stated there. So I'm gonna copy this and I'm gonna go to the second line. Oh, there I had my my formula already, and let's run this. And let's see if there are records here. So we see we have our active records returned to PowerApps. Now let's recall this. Let's say this is and get registrations active, and copy this part, go to the next and paste it in here. So now we have a button we can trigger and get our active registrations in. But now I'm doing something wrong, so let's fix that, because I don't want all the registration, I only want the registrations for my active user. So first let's go to the onStart parameter, and what we're gonna do here is say let's do a line here and say update or set user ID to 1 2 3 4 5 6, and as I said earlier, normally this would be okay. Why is it yelling? Okay, I have a user ID somewhere else probably, so let's say all 365 user ID. Let's take this part. Let's see why it doesn't work. Do just one. Okay, we can do one. Okay. Oh. Of course, we have to put in a string, as a string is formatted in PowerApps, and that you get from doing different environments for each other. So now we have a user ID, and what we can do here is basically say set event2 to not event2, which will trigger our second button. Now the second button here we want to put in a user ID, but it's not supported yet. So first let's go to our SQL server, go to our store procedure, modify this, and we're gonna add a user ID. This is a varchar, let's say 50, and basically it's 0. Let's close this. I forgot this the last time, and do the same for user ID is 0, set at user ID is no, close our thing, and we'll say end at user ID is no, or 365 ID, or is at user ID. So, and you see all the red lines, and it's because our cache of our server isn't refreshed for the view we just made. So let's do Ctrl+Shift+R to update our cache locally. And when it's right and we wait a little bit, all the red signs will disappear. So now we are able to put the user in our user ID. Let's execute this to save this. Then we go back to the browser and go to our flow. Now when we change to this and then change back, we get the user ID. Let's ask in PowerApps, and for the rest it stays the same for this part flow. So now we are able to put in a user ID as an extra parameter. Now let's go to PowerApps, and we see this is having a hiccup because it's still in the old version and it won't refresh itself. So let's go to the data source again, go to the registration active and remove our connection. Then go to a clean button, go to the action flow, add our connection, and now we see we have two parameters we can put in, and our flow is restored, and we can try to put this. Now let's see if we already have our variables set. Okay, probably not. User ID has no value, so let's now run our app and say when we start our app, we want to set the user ID, get our registrations, and when everything is right, we have an active list. But why don't we have the extra list? So let's go to variables, go to our user. There is a text value here, which is okay. Let's run this again, go to our collection, see our list, and we see we don't get our records back. So let's try to test this. Oh, probably I know what's happening. Let's see our registrations, and we have a 7 there. Okay, that's the problem. So let's go back to our Power App, on start parameter, and say this should be 7. Let's now start the app, get our registration, see if we have our values, and we have. Let's see the active part, active, false or true. Let's look at this. It's 1, so it's strange that we get more than 1 record back. So let's run a testing flow to see what's happening. And also here we get 2 records. So let's go to the SQL side. And now we don't have to change anything here anymore, because we only have to do something at the SQL side to be able to do something here, because here it's going wrong. And let's run this. So let's execute a store procedure, do a 1 and 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. Run this script. We get 2 records back, which is a little bit strange. Let's see what happens when we do 1. Okay, I understand what's happening. Let's modify this one, because what's happening is that the or and the end parts are evaluated together. So we have to have our both parts apart from each other. So this is gonna give a true or false, and this is gonna give a true or false. So what we had was this was wrong, this was wrong, this part was wrong, but because this was right, we get all the records back. So when we fix this now and we do this again, we get 1 record, and for 1 we get 1 record. So you see, with this kind of things, it's just test again and test it again, see what happens, see if you get the right records back, and do it in every part of your solution. So first when you build it, then when you have a view, then when you have the store procedure, you check always if you get the right records back or the things you would expect. So if we now do an on start, so we set our records, we get the active registrations, and now when it's right, we get just 1 record. Okay, so this is all how to do it, and to have also the text and everything for the user. You can just show, and you can just put these parameters to your gallery and to a text box or wherever you would like to have to show this kind of records. And you would say we are done, but no, that's not the case. And let's go to the SQL server to do that. And I noticed that we are busy an hour now, more than an hour. So let's try to do this a little bit faster. Let's first say I want to add this because this is fine, and say I want to close all with this. So I have a little bit of clean sheet, and then say script as updates to a new query, and we're gonna update without a, and set active to 0. Oh, let's do a where clause where ID is 2, because we want to have the end time cut dates also in, no notes, and the rest is okay. Let's run this. I think it's like this. And now let's run our query, and now we don't get records back. So let's see what happens when we now run this in our flow, and in this case just run only the get registration like we do later in our app, so not on start but when we use it later. And let's see what happens. Look, okay, I think they have fixed it. There used to be a problem here. Let's run this. So active should be 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Run flow. It's successful. There's no table, and there is an empty response. Okay, this is nice. It used to be till about a month ago that when you would do PowerApps execute store procedure and you response to PowerApps and you had a empty table, so no records, this part would break basically. And then what we did, and I had the help from Mr. Dank from the PowerApps team, I first put in a condition here, and after that didn't work because first the flow broke, then I had a condition, then flow didn't break but PowerApps broke. I did a trick at the side of SQL server, and it isn't needed anymore because basically the response will just put a empty table back to PowerApps, which is very nice. Good, they fixed it. But normally I would have a error here. So what I used to do is, and I'm gonna show you this trick just basically because it's a nice feature for other problems in the future. What I did is I surrounded this part and say union all, and select nulls, and basically I did a nulls for all the columns I want to retrieve. What this part did is add an extra empty line to my flow to my response, which basically gives a response which is always one line in a table, back to PowerApps, and then in PowerApps I remove the last line. And my error was fixed. But as I said, this isn't needed anymore, so let's leave it at this. And okay, I'm very happy they fixed this, because this was a problem it took me about 2 weeks to solve. So very nice. So now I got my registrations, and I can bring my active registration back to PowerApps, and when it's empty I have an empty collection, and when it's not empty then I have a collection of one record, maximum one record. So a long video, but I think I showed you now how to build an active fact table with extra information you need to display to the user, and that's it. Okay, now thank you for watching this video. In the next video we're gonna talk about adding information to our SQL server and updating records which are there. So we basically gonna create records, we're gonna update them, and we're gonna do that all basically in one stored procedure. And I'm gonna show you how to do this. So thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. See you later.